Welcome back to another episode of the Read Pile. Today I'm going to be looking at Volume 1 of UZUMAKI by Junji Ito. This is a horror manga, and this is Volume 1, at least in this form. This has been published multiple times since the 90s when it first came out. It was first in 98 through 99, and it's been re-released multiple times since then in its native language, translated to English, forwards and backwards. My copy today has been flipped so that it is read left to right, as we do in America. I also have versions where it is the correct way, right to left, but for today I'm just looking at this one because this is the one I had most recently acquired. They have this split up into 3 different volumes. I'll be taking a look at those as I get to them, but I just finished up with this one and I thought I would take a look at it because this is what the new anime is going to be mostly based on, and I wanted to see how close they got. There have been adaptations of this in the past. They did a movie, a live action one actually, for this a while ago, and I believe there's also been adaptations of parts of this before, but it was mostly kind of like a bunch of different stories by Junji Ito, and not all of them were from UZUMAKI, so I don't know. I think it was kind of like an anthology sort of a series the past time that was done as an anime. But this time I believe it's all just strictly UZUMAKI, so this book should be mostly what the first season is, I would assume. So this is, as I mentioned, a horror manga, and it is in black and white for the most part. The first few pages are in color here as they introduce you to Kirie, who is the main character you follow. She's a high school girl who lives in this town here, Kurôzu-cho. I probably said that wrong also. But as you see, very nice art here. This is the first few pages are in color, and she's basically telling you about this town that she grew up in. There she is, and how basically everyone in it is obsessed with spirals. Uzumaki translates to spiral, so that's kind of what this whole story centers around, or spirals around, and everything comes from that obsession. It's basically something that kind of poisons the whole town slowly. Here's even some more art demonstrating just how spirals are everywhere in life, so it's kind of easy to miss that they're kind of everywhere, but they sort of are. That's one thing this book points out, is that there are spirals everywhere, so if you're someone who gets obsessed with stuff like that, maybe turn this video off now. Then it switches over to black and white. So this town is like filled with just spiral type things. There's all sorts of stuff like whirlwinds, whirlpools in the river. When she goes by the river, sometimes there's just like whirlpools everywhere. And there's this guy here that she comes across who's just, obsessed with this snail shell he found. I mean, look at this art. That's very nice art. Very detailed, kind of creepy there. And he's just kind of looking at this thing and won't respond. And later on, she's just, going to school. And here's this guy that's in most of the stories also. He's another recurring character. His name is Shuichi. I think I said that right. And he is sort of like the male protagonist, along with her being the female protagonist. I'm not sure yet if they're ever going to be like a couple or anything. They just sort of appear to be friends for the most part, and noticing the weird things around the town together, and seemingly being some of the only people who really take notice of it and how weird it is, but just also kind of just dealing with it. It's sort of weird. They're just hanging around. I'm not going to get too far into this book, so I don't want to show you all the really gross and weird stuff, but they just kind of talk and hang about, and they sort of like meet up with this guy again. Her father, this guy here, he like makes pottery and stuff, so that's sort of his thing. You might be able to tell where that's going, this spinning wheel, spinning all this clay, talking about the art of the spiral. And that's when Shuichi, his dad, is all talking about how spirals are like everywhere, and like, he's just super into this stuff. Like, he's kind of nuts, like you can see. Like he's freaking out. Like he's a close talker, and he's just super into this stuff. Everyone thinks it's super weird. He like starts to get obsessed with his food to the point where he needed these little fish crackers in his food that had a spiral on them, and when they ran out, he had to stir his food into a whirlpool before he could eat it, and then he had to stir all of his baths into a whirlpool before he could get into the bath. I think he just wouldn't do anything without there being a spiral. There's some more whirlwinds going by. There's some whirlpools in the river. Just everything is spiraling in this town. I don't know if there's like magnets in the ground or something, but this dude's just freaking out about it. she threw away his collection of spirals. He was like drawing spirals and making spiral stuff, and his wife threw it away because she realized he was like losing his mind. Then his eyes just start spinning around. He's like, I'll make my own spirals. So he spins his eyes around, but like independently of each other, and they just start spinning. Just spinning around. And he's just laughing and spinning his eyes. It's what happens in this town. Like he runs into him again, and he's like, look what I can do with my tongue now. That's also a spiral. Like, what is happening? Is this like, whoa? Like, why? What is going on? Like, why doesn't anyone like call the police? There's the crematorium chimney. So pretty much everyone in this town, there's a funeral, there's a crematorium. But yeah, he passed away a couple of days later. And so they have this funeral for him there, and there's all the smoke because I guess he just goes right up right there. It's probably something that I'm missing due to cultural differences. I don't know if that's how it is on a little island town, if that's how it would be, or this is like time period restricted type stuff. But they're talking about how they found the dad. They said like, oh, he had an accident. That's what they were telling people. But really, no, he basically got this big wash tub here, and they opened it up, and they find that he crammed himself inside of it into a big old spiral. Like, I love this guy as an artist, but he also draws some stuff that's just like what is happening here? Like, every part of this guy has just been spiraled into this little basket, and it's his tongue, like his eyeballs still spun around, his hands all woven together. It's so that's that. I mean, that kind of just goes on, and then they notice that the smoke from his crematorium, like his cremation, it's up in the sky. It's a big spiral, and that's where chapter 2 begins. I mean, the book keeps on going from there. There's all kinds of stuff. Shuichi's mother then kind of becomes possessed by this whole spiral obsession. She sees spirals in her fingerprints, so she cuts them off, and there's spirals like all over the place, like in her eardrums, so she wants to like stab those out because there could be a spiral in there. That's bad. So they have to like wrap up her hands and everything, which are already injured, and make sure she can't get to that. And I mean, it's just crazy. And then suddenly she's being haunted by the ghost of her husband, who she sees as this like giant centipede thing that like crawls in her ear, and it's just like crazy, and like, come join me in the spiral and all that. And she just loses her mind, and it's pretty sad. She eventually, because of her eardrum spirals, she thinks she won't be able to hear the spiral calling to her anymore if she takes care of that, and she does. It's pretty nutty. Yeah. The next one, I'll kind of show you just a little bit, and then we'll kind of leave the rest here. I'll just tell you a little bit about them. Essentially, this is the one that you're going to see in all those previews for the anime TV show right now. The girl with the spinning eyeball face under her hat. It just basically begins with this girl here who's got a tiny little scar on her head, and that scar just eventually grows and grows and grows and spirals out of control, and for whatever reason, yeah, it just starts to spiral, and it gets really weird, and eventually that happens, and it just starts to keep going to the point where then that happens, and then her eyeball just gets flushed down her brain toilet, whatever that is. And everyone just keeps seeing these things and just screaming about them, and then just letting them happen, and let's go just tell Shuichi about it, and he's gonna look sad and be like, yep, that's pretty much it. And it just keeps happening, and yeah, just keeps going and going and going, and it's pretty crazy. It's just a whole bunch of stuff like this. It keeps going, although it does get a little bit stranger as they go on. So after that story, there are 3 more. So there's like 6 kind of chapters in this book. The other one after this, Kirie's dad starts making pottery from clay from the bottom of the pond, and the pond has been like sucking up all the ash and smoke from the crematorium. So it's like all these spiral obsessed souls that have gone in there are now in his pottery. There's also kind of a Romeo and Juliet type story in here about 2 kids who are kind of really into each other but not allowed to be together for whatever reason, and they kind of become entangled, if you will. I'm just going to leave it at that. And the last one is sort of the silliest one, but it is, a lot of these stories are just kind of like, what if, what if there was a curse in your pottery clay? What if your hair got cursed, which is what this last one is. Like, there's spirals and people have curly hair, and suddenly Kirie's hair starts growing and spiraling and dragging her around the town for attention. It's very strange. So it'll be very interesting to see where this kind of keeps going after this for the other 2 volumes that are there. I have read some of his other stories as well, and they are they're pretty cool, but I mean, a lot of them, they just feel sort of like Tales from the Crypts, like manga Tales from the Crypt stories instead of American comic Tales from the Crypt stories, where it's just like, you know, some crazy thing happens and it happens to the people, and then the next story happens and it's like a reset, start over with a new thing, even though everyone remembers all these crazy things that happened. So I guess we'll see where it goes from there. I'm interested to keep following it, and I really do appreciate the art. I mean, this guy wrote and drew this whole thing, and he was just pumping out these comics like crazy. It's just astounding to me as someone who takes so long to draw, like how he can get such perfect, detailed art, and it just looks so like crazy. Like, look at that. Like, oh wow, I don't know, just very detailed, very creepy when it needs to be. Very well done. It'll be interesting to see how the anime translates all this, and I'm looking forward to it. Looking forward to continuing this. I'm looking forward to jumping into some other ones. I've also got one by friend of the show, Winston Gambro, so I'll be looking at that as soon as possible, assuming Toast is still taking a little bit of time off here. Anyways, I hope you have enjoyed taking a look at this book with me. I'd recommend it if you're into horror manga, or if you're into just horror comics. You can get multiple different versions of these. They even have an omnibus, I believe, that's just the full stack of these stories, like all of them together, and it's like 1,000 pages or something. But I mean, if you want all these cool comics, that's the way to go. So there are many options out there for you to find these if you want them. And now you can see the show, or you can watch the old movie, or some of the old anime as well. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.